An update in the Charles Dyer situation. There's a complicating factor on the M203 that we recovered at his house. Now, from what we know is an M203 was recovered by sheriff's deputies. They filed some reports of the ATF. The ATF may or may not have thoroughly examined the unit that was found by sheriff's deputies. It looked apparently like one of the ones in these pictures. Now, these are pulled from catalog websites that sell airsoft M203s. And apparently, a lot of these airsoft M203s, they look real. They have serial numbers. They have government markings. And it appears that there was a coincidence situation where the serial numbers on some of these actually match some that had been stolen from the government a few years ago.
Okay, so with these airsoft M203s, and I'm following up some pictures that should hopefully be showing up on your screen, and we're going to go back and forth between narration on this, but apparently the airsoft M203s are made from a softer type of a metal than the real deal. And what Randy Shivak had explained to me years ago is that if a receiver is made out of the softer metal, it may function with 37mm rounds, which are very low pressure rounds. They have plastic casings. They're not going to burst a chamber on something like that. However, a lot of times there's no guarantees, and it's one reason there's a big price difference between different types of 37mm launchers. However, when you're looking at the actual government specification M203s, they're a lot more expensive, even though you got the metal in the same size and shape as a lot of this airsoft stuff. The reason for the higher expense is the manufacturing process to deal with this super hard grade of aluminum that's used on there. Even though metallically it's aluminum, because of the processes that it's been put through, it's much harder to work with. It's very much stronger aluminum than this other stuff. The airsoft receivers, for the most part, are precision cast alloy. It involves aluminum and zinc and some other materials that are easy to cast. So those things, they have a tendency to cost usually under $200. The compatibility of parts on those is going to vary. From what I've been able to tell, you cannot install a regular 40mm barrel on there. It's been made not to do that. What they call a 40mm airsoft round is usually it's pretty complex and expensive, but it's a small propane or CO2 filled thing that will you put a bunch of BBs in it, and the guys explained to me, you put a bunch of BBs into it. When the pin hits it, and usually it's a wider firing pin than a regular one, it releases the gas or punctures a little gas cylinder, and it fires all these things at once. Kind of like a shotgun type of a thing, but it fires these plastic pellets, and it's compressed air powered or compressed gas, green gas, propane, some of these things that are used with the airsoft stuff. It's easy to mistake one of those if something's been changed on it. It's easy to mistake it for the real thing. However, it's not. The other thing it's not, even if they've been serial numbered, which does confuse the issue, is it's not a stolen government unit. However, that requires a metallurgical analysis. The other thing that's going to happen is we need to have help from a lot of people on YouTube. Is we need to find out which manufacturers out there have been making government marked M203 type grenade launchers, and if they've been using their own serial number series, and we get people sending pictures and able to respond with information about this, we can determine roughly when the unit that Charles Dyer ended up with was sold, where it may have been imported, or at least who sold them, who sold the ones before and after that, because they're probably floating around out there in the US right now. And if we can determine that and compare it to the list of guns that were apparently stolen from Fort Irwin a few years ago, there's a high likelihood that there's just a coincidence of serial numbers, and that's what was going on. And it's an issue where, I watch some conspiracy theories. I believe some of that stuff, not all of it, but if it was a situation where there was a duplicate serial number on very similar looking items, you can kind of understand why the government would react the way they did. However, it is a situation that can be clarified, it can be cleared up, it requires some testing, and I think what we need to do is look at the conflict on this issue, and we have to have some determination and some commitment to make sure that the truth is out no matter what. That the truth of these things, it has to be straightened out. Yeah, that's based on the information I've been given more lately. Now, if it is something else, if he had this stolen government unit, that's another matter. We can still, if people really want to defend him on this, you could still attack the purpose of the warrant on the stolen government unit, if there was a stolen government unit out there, because the warrant was gained through a false allegation of the child molestation. The legal theory would be the fruit of the poison tree. It's a bad warrant. That if somebody goes on a fishing expedition based on a false accusation that they know is false, and it's still a bad warrant. However, there's another way to clear this up, which is this is a 37mm launcher. It was a 37mm launcher that was originally an airsoft launcher. Somebody changed the barrel, bored it out, did something to take this airsoft unit, make it a 37mm launcher. It's marked U.S. government property, marked with a serial number, and that serial number happens to match something that was stolen from the government several years ago. There's another possibility, which is the units that were stolen from the government were sold to these overseas people. The overseas people not only copied the design of the M203, they copied the serial number when they were making the knockoffs. Now, my understanding is that some of the models for airsoft guns, like when they're wanting to copy a particular make and model of gun, sometimes they may acquire something on the black market and not realize it. They may have thought that they weren't breaking the law if the person stole those from the military, demilitarized them by cutting them up, and then sent them overseas, and then they had to be reconstructed as airsoft guns over there. They may not have even realized that they were getting stolen merchandise. They may have thought, for whatever legitimate reason, it had been demilitarized, and the only person at fault would be the person who stole them from the army to begin with. The other thing that sort of backs up Charles's story is that, from the best of our knowledge, looking at this from the outside, is that no 40mm anti-personnel ammunition was found. Usually, if somebody's got an M203 launcher, they're going to want some rounds for it. There was no 40mm anti-personnel ammunition found.
Now, you can clearly see serial numbers here. These may or may not match the serial numbers of a stolen government unit or the units that were used as prototypes when these replicas were made. There's another review of a G&P M203. There's several of them on YouTube. You can find them yourself. There's one of my favorites that's linked over. They look real, but they're not.